Hey everyone, welcome to Chess on the Brain with National Master David Bennett. Let's see if this thing's working. It's my first stream. Looks like my live stream is offline. Okay. How do I get this thing started? So we've got starting. We have stream health. Okay, it looks like we're live. Again, I'm a newbie at this. It's my first time streaming. So welcome everyone to Chess on the Brain with National Master David Bennett. And I want to look at a Reshevsky game. So I found this through David Bronstein's Zurich International Chess Tournament in 1953, which is a really famous book. And basically, from what I understand, what David Bronstein does, was one of the best chess players in the world to never become world champion, is how they describe it. And what he does is he basically just looks at this chess tournament among all these international chess superstars, and he analyzes, from what I understand, every single game in depth. So that's it's something that's unique. I don't think this has ever been done to this and published in a book available for everyone to this to this magnitude. So let's check it out. I was looking through and I saw this Reshevsky game. I lost the page now, but I had a Reshevsky game. I pulled it up right here. Reshevsky versus Szabo, I think a Hungarian player. So this is Zurich Candidates 1953, and we have a Grunfeld defense. So what I'm going to do is I'm training for the Philadelphia International later on this month. So what I want to do is just kind of show you how I'm reading through the book. I mean, hopefully you'll read through books yourself, but hey, this incentivizes me to actually do more reading myself, which I'll do from time to time. But this gives me more incentive, and hopefully others can gain from it. That you guys can learn something from how I look at it, how I look at this book, how I analyze it, specifically from this game, but also you can do it yourself. So let's see, what page was it on? I lost my page. That's not good. See this? Oh, there we are, 39. See, I'll probably get a few hiccups this first time, but let's see if it works. It's 21st century. Let's see if it works. So we have Reshevsky versus Szabo. And the interesting thing is that Reshevsky is also known as one of the strongest chess players in the world who never became world champion. Maybe not as strong as Bronstein, but I'm pretty sure he won the U.S. championship multiple times. He was kind of in competition with Fischer. Of course, Fischer became much stronger than Reshevsky, but he was definitely one of the strongest in the U.S. And so again, this is from Zurich International Chess Tournament in 1953. So we have Reshevsky versus Szabo. Now I have the game here that I Googled from chessgames.com. So what I want to do is go to the PGN. You can find the PGN here. Where is that? Should say view PGN somewhere. There we go. We can view it. And we'll just copy and paste it. I like using the Lichess server. That's an easy one to use. Open source software. So we go down here. So I just went to show you how I did it. I went to Lichess, went to Tools, Analysis Board, and we got the PGN right here. I think we press Import. There we go. Has it? Import PGN. So that'll pull it up here. Now this is my first time looking at it, so I want it to be fresh for me and for you. This isn't, I'm completely unbiased in my approach to this game, other than the fact that I like Bronstein and Reshevsky, and I think that they're awesome players. It's really good to learn from classics like this, because chess, yeah, it goes through some evolution. You have changes in terms of computers and things that offers, but chess is still the same, and especially with those outliers, like some of these top players. I think if any one of these guys were playing today, they would still be able to hold their own. Some people act like they couldn't, but I think they would, especially if you get some of the world champions, like back from the early 20th century, like Capablanca or Lasker. I think any one of those guys would still be close to the top today. Maybe they just have to brush up on some theory and stuff. But that's the thing. I think even in some of these games, it shows you like you can play sort of anti-theoretical lines, avoid all that theory, and just play chess. Of course, Fischer Random Chess helps a bit with that. But we can just play chess and understand it. So we have a Grunfeld defense. Let's check it out now. We have it loaded. So I'm not going to use Stockfish unless I feel the need, like it's really, really complicated. But I want to show you how I'm thinking through it, because a lot of times when I study, I'll just take out a chessboard and look at the games from a book. That's traditionally how I've done it. So I'm gonna try to stick with that. Of course, you can use an engine if you want, but sometimes you don't really need to. We're just trying to get the main ideas. We don't need to know every single possibility out there. That helps with in-depth game analysis of your own game sometimes. But right now, it's about the ideas. What are these brilliant positional and the strategic ideas, the tactical ideas? How did he develop an attack and so forth that Reshevsky used? There was another one in here too that I want to look at. But let's start with this. So let me just make sure I'm doing this right. Are we live? Positional and the strategic ideas, the tactical ideas. How did he develop an attack and so forth that Reshevsky used? There was another one in here too. Pause that because that's not going to work. Yeah, looks like we're live. Stream health. I don't know. It says red, but whatever. Looks like we're going. So, okay. So we have d4, played by Reshevsky. Sabo goes knight f6. Reshevsky goes c4, g6. Okay, so we're entering maybe a King's Indian or a Grunfeld. Interestingly, Bobby Fischer liked to play both of those as black. So we have knight c3, d5. Okay, so Sabo chooses the Grunfeld, and we're looking at how does Reshevsky win this game with the white pieces. So periodically you'll see there's some commentary by Bronstein. He gives pretty in-depth commentary. So we'll look at that, and I'll give you some of my own ideas as well as we're looking through. So after d5, bishop to f4. Okay, just active development. And you can imagine you might see something like this in modern chess as well. It hasn't changed that much in a lot of these lines. Bishop g7, e3. Okay, so Reshevsky is just employing a real solid setup, not doing anything too fancy, just getting his pieces out. He got his bishop outside the pawn chain, which is always useful. Got some pressure against c7. Maybe he'll anticipate opening up that c file later on to enhance his pressure on the c file with his rook, for example. Okay, so then we have black castles quickly. It says offering a pawn. Interesting. Offering what looks like the c7 pawn. So if some exchange of the pawns and knights happens on d5 and the queen ends up coming here, then the c7 pawn will fall. But of course, Reshevsky is going to significantly fall behind in development. So we'll see about that. Yeah, he just shows the line where the bishop takes on c7. I'll play it out. So for example, takes, knight takes, queen takes. And if he wants, he could take on c7. What does he say about it? For the quick development of black's queen side. But Reshevsky prefers a quieter continuation. Yeah, I don't think I would go for that pawn. That looks a bit too greedy, a bit too risky early in the game. You need to finish your development because there's so many classic examples of people just getting crushed by leaving their king in the center, ignoring their development. Of course, the rules are meant to be broken. You could be a contrarian and try to break it, but if you're going to do so, make sure it works. Okay, we have a pretty good chance that it's going to work. Okay, so instead he opts for queen b3. That seems reasonable. Funny enough, this reminds me of Fischer's game of the century, where Fischer played the Grunfeld as black, and his opponent Byrne played the similar structure with bishop f4 and queen b3. I assume that it's obviously that white is not going to play quite as badly as Byrne did in that game. I mean, he made some inaccuracies, and then Fischer played brilliantly and completely exploited him. Definitely check out Fischer's game of the century if you haven't seen it. I like to use that in my teaching a lot. Really instructive play. Okay, so we have queen b3. Seems natural. So white is enhancing his pressure against d5 and looking at b7 as well. It's an active move. Okay, but you notice that white hasn't developed his king side at all, that's what I'm noting first. It seems interesting. So I mean, it seems that white's position is solid enough here, and he could quickly get him out, but he needs to do that quickly and before black strikes too hard in the center and opens things up, which I'm sure is what Sabo, if I'm pronouncing his name correctly, what Sabo is going to try and do. Okay, so we have c5. There we go. He strikes back. Takes. Okay, interesting. Let's see how this plays out. takes on d5, and then Sabo takes on d4. So is it just a fair exchange? Let's see. Takes back. e6. Okay. Yeah, well, he's trying to tear the position open. He sees there's that target king on e1. He says, let me get to that king as soon as possible. So after e6, it says, having begun the game in gambit style, yeah, Sabo sees no point in half measures. I like that. And sacrifices a second pawn. This gambit is an idea of Trifunovich's and is based on the fact that white has not one kingside piece developed yet, as I mentioned. Black seeks to destroy the enemy pawn center and create threats against the king. Yeah, classical romantic chess. Just tear everything open, get to the king who hasn't castled yet. That's why we've learned from history that we should probably castle our king soon. Sometimes we forget history, in many cases, in chess and otherwise. In the present instance, however, the price paid for all this, 2 pawns, is too high. Okay, that's interesting. So you reach a point where you have to say, is it worth it to sacrifice not just 1 pawn, but 2 pawns? Because if I can survive, let's say we're playing as white, as Reshevsky, if we can survive that, well, then we can just hold on to 2 pawns and pretty easily win any endgame. That's some serious endgame insurance right there. That our opponent will have to avoid an endgame at all costs, in which case just threatening to trade down and go into an endgame is to white's advantage. So meaning that black can get chased all across the board while after white consolidates, of course. So let's see what happens. I'm curious as to what kind of compensation Sabo gets for the pawns. So he gives up the e pawn, but gets his pieces out quickly. So takes on e6. Oh, okay, so he's allowing the f pawn to be taken as well. He just goes knight c6. He says, keep on taking, and you're just going to keep tearing open those lines that are going to lead straight to your uncastled king and other weak spots in white's position, given that he's moved a lot of his pawns. And once pawns move, they can never go back, creating some serious weaknesses. Okay, so knight to c6. He goes for it. So Reshevsky determined that it's safe to take a second pawn. After takes, king goes to h8. I guess he figures he'll recapture that pawn later. Well, of course, now you don't have rook e8, unless you want to lose your rook for the pawn. But let's see what he has in mind. So king h8. Knight goes to f3. Knight takes on d4. Okay, so he gets the pawn back now. He's like, just kidding. I actually am not going to give up 2 pawns. Well, right now we have 3, 6, 7 for white, 4 for... Oh, I see. Well, yeah, we're actually down 3 pawns temporarily for black. But again, this pawn can be taken on d4, the f7 pawn's a sitting duck. Still, when I'm looking at this position, I'm thinking, like, look at those weaknesses in black's position. First of all, you have a queen, not just guarding the pawn, but that's a very dangerous diagonal, especially when you consider prospects like knight g5 and knight e5. So I definitely like white here. I just got to get that king safe. But assuming that white can secure his king, maybe even, I don't want to have to castle queenside because it's rather open. But if we could just do something like bishop, let's say something modest like bishop e2, the knight guards the bishop. If he comes out to e2, and then castle our king. And then should be good. Not just that we've consolidated, but given that black has sacrificed all those pawns, if he doesn't get his dynamic compensation, he's got some serious problems in that position. Let's see what happens there. So, oh, the face, huh? Okay, let's play it out. So knight f3. Knight takes d4. Knight takes d4. Queen takes. Okay, so now he's temporarily down 2 pawns. Bishop's under attack, so he just moves back to e3. Reasonable enough. I'll really try and explain as much as I can as I'm seeing this, the ideas behind the move. So if you're newer to chess, hopefully it'll make sense to you, and if you're more advanced at chess, we'll obviously get into some other things too, but I'll still try and break it down in a way that makes sense. But so far, nothing too tricky other than the pawn sacrifice of pawns to open up fresh lines to get at the white king, and the question is whether the white king can scoot out of there and survive, basically. Okay, so obviously now the bishop is hanging. So he simply says, all right, let's attack and defend simultaneously. Bishop e3, attacking the queen. Okay, setting up a little pin on the bishop. So now, of course, black is anticipating knight g4. you pin it and you win it, right? Get that pin on the bishop, try to take it. That'll be nice if black can secure those two bishops. I always talk about the bishop pair. Get the strength of those two bishops cutting across the board. And not to mention that you're just weakening the dark squares if you lose that bishop. You lose the pawn as well if you're going to go for this. So that could be a problem for Reshevsky. Let's see what he does after queen e5. Maybe just bishop e2, something simple like that. Let's see what he does. Okay, so it looks like a critical moment here. So there's a diagram already at this position. We've got a diagram, and then he gives some analysis. He says, you will find this diagram in the book Grunfeld Odbrana by Trivunovich, Gruber, and Bozic. Okay, so he gives the citation with a note stating that black, for his two sacrifice pawns, has two threats. Knight g4, as we just looked at, and bishop e6. So why is bishop e6 a threat? Seems uncomfortable for the queen. You recapture the pawn. What does he say? Clearly both sides are playing a prepared line. Well, we'll see. Now we shall see how Reshevsky uses one bishop to meet both threats. One bishop to meet both threats. So, well, you can't do this, anything with this one, so it's got to be the f1 bishop. So I was thinking maybe bishop e2, unpinning the bishop on e3, maybe preparing to anticipate knight g4, but that doesn't stop bishop e6. So is it bishop c4? That doesn't stop knight g4. What does he do? Yeah, he just goes bishop e2. Okay, what do we do about bishop e6 then? Oh, so once he sees bishop e6, then he drops bishop c4 down. Interesting. So it was almost like a waiting move. Wait for you to go bishop e6. Of course, we're not getting greedy with taking on b7. Besides, then rook b8 and the rook comes down. I think one of the games I analyzed was Edward's game, I think, where he took on b7 and basically could have gotten checkmated or completely lost. So yeah, we don't want to be too greedy with grabbing pawns like that, especially if we lose the b2 anyway. So bishop c4. So now if he goes, well, he can't go knight g4 now because he just drops e6. That doesn't look good. Oh, I mean, you take on e3, but that wouldn't recommend it. You're dropping a whole piece. It looks like white can survive. White can block with his knight on e2. So, and then if the bishop takes, for example, which he doesn't, but then the queen takes, and now we're covering g4. So yeah, he dealt with the threat of bishop e6, and he dealt with the threat of knight g4 simultaneously. Okay, maybe he can go rook c8, but it looks like white should have a decent position. I would probably just play, well, we have to watch out for rook takes c3 stuff after we move our queen with some tricks. We do want to cover g4, though. Can we just trade queens? I think queen d4 looks reasonable. If he wants to take, okay, great. We'll be happy to play that endgame. We got 3-5. Okay, it'll be 4. We'll be up a clean pawn and castle next move. Can't complain about being up a clean pawn in the endgame. I don't think black has any real compensation there. And if he runs, okay, then we castle. We'll still have to move our queen around a bit, but it seems that white's position is pretty solid here. Some issues on the king's side maybe with that open f-file, but hey, knight g4 stopped temporarily. Maybe queen d4 or even queen f4, something like that. But we have to deal with this. We have to cover the knight or deal with the queen being so active in the center. Okay, so the bishop just goes to d7. So we don't need to worry about any of that. And now, for the time being, white just holds on to that. So now we got 3, 4, 5, 6 against 4. Okay, so we're up 2 pawns. And again, those light squares are just dominant for white here. Just really controlling the light squares. Can he just castle now? So he doesn't want the knight g4 move. Okay, that makes sense. So he's patiently taking a move, that prophylactic move, safety move, h3. I like it. h3, stopping knight g4. And yeah, I think that since white dealt with the immediate threats that black had, he can take a move to do that, stopping any threats against his bishop. And then on the next move, I think we'll see. No, he doesn't castle to move 22. I mean, but I would anticipate castling quickly. But of course, that's because black says, hey, I'm going to mess with you. I'm going to try and stir up some trouble before you have a chance to castle. He pretty much has to. Because again, if white can escape that with 2 extra pawns and probably with a better position too, with those weaknesses in black's position, then Sabo can almost resign soon enough, especially once we reach an endgame. So he stirs up some trouble. He goes b5. All right, okay, there's a note here. So he says after bishop d7. This was, okay, so apparently, I guess Bronstein knew that this was preparation, and he said that this was Szabo's first independent move of this game. He must have talked to them or something. And it loses immediately. Oh wow, so this is, okay, so this is just a one position based on what happens next. Trading bishops in order to develop the rook to c8 with tempo would have been more in the spirit of this variation. Yeah, I think we already looked at that with rook a c8. If queen b3, so he's saying move 17, queen b3. I think he means after rook c8. So he's saying if queen b3 here, yeah, then of course, then we get knight g4. Well, then you have to make something ugly like knight d1. And then he says rook c7, and black, I imagine, is doing okay. Recovers one of his pawns. Oh, if queen d4, he actually answers that. There we go. He says if queen d4, then queen h5. Yeah, I was thinking about that. Because then it's the knight, he still wants that. And now you notice that the bishop is looking at the queen. So you try to trade, but black still keeps stirring up some trouble. So he had to at least try that. Prevents white from castling due to this threat of knight g4. That's nasty. And allows the recovery of one of black's pawns. Yeah, okay, so it's much more complicated. Reshevsky would have been in for a far more difficult time if Szabo had played this line. So after bishop d7, h3, but he says he's just losing after bishop d7. So I guess h3 was enough to win. Stirring up trouble with b5. Oh, it's funny, he answers the queen f4 move too. And then, but he says with reasonable counterplay after queen back to e6. Okay, so next we have bishop e2. Interesting. So b5, bishop e2. Now, he probably doesn't want to take that pawn on b5. He could. He has 3 attackers for 2 defenders. But again, he's not getting greedy. And you could just imagine that rook's coming to b8. Yeah. Let's say you take with the bishop. Okay, rook b8 instantly. And that just doesn't look healthy for Reshevsky in this position. Why get off track given to your opponent's will? Why would you want to do that? I think it was, who said it? The chess is like a battle for willpower. It talks a lot about willpower. Lasker gets into that, about the strength of, the psychology and the strength of your mind, mental toughness, which I got from wrestling, and I applied it to chess. But it was, who was it? Korchnoi, I think it was, who talked about willpower in chess. So willpower, don't give in to your opponent. Force your ideas. So once in a while, yeah, play a prophylactic move, stop their ideas. That's part of your own willpower, saying, no, you're not going to get to do what you want to do. I'm going to do what I want to do. So, of course, we're not going to play their game. We're going to play our game. Okay, so bishop e2. Now we're on move 17. Okay, he says hello again, going back to e6. Then does he take it? So move 17. Okay, no commentary for a while here. He does take it. So at least when he takes it, he takes with his queen, which threatens a queen trade. So in a way, kind of like how I mentioned earlier, given that white's up material, by threatening trades, it's kind of like a regular threat. It's almost like a pawn threatening a knight, because it's not something that black wants to do here. Trading down is just going to result in, it's going to result in 5 pawns against 3 pawns, and again, at the grandmaster level, unless something miraculous happens, it should be a win in that case. Okay. So the knight blocks, interesting, unleashing the bishop on g7, hitting c3. This seems reasonable. I like that move. I think under the circumstances, I think it was Szabo's probably best choice. Okay, he says, all right, let's trade. Takes, but now we got to watch out for that b2 pawn. So I think that's what Szabo wanted. He at least gets counterplay against b2. a6. Okay, throwing a little intermezzo, a little in-between move. a6 before recapturing. You got to be careful with those kinds of moves, but sometimes they work really well. So he just goes queen c5. Where is he anticipating to go next? Possibly e7. Since as long as the pawn stays there, you can take it soon. But where would he go? Can't go to d4 anymore because he's got too much power on the diagonal. Let's see what he has in mind. So he gets hit by the rook. Queen a3. Interesting. Nice lateral defense of the bishop, securing his position, and just kind of keeping an eye on a6. in case he wants to capture later on. Not to mention the bishop can take it too. So we're defending and attacking. And we're looking in this way. Maybe that'll help us infiltrate on e7 or something. Maybe some tactics on f8 later on with that pawn on f7. So there's a lot of possibilities with queen a3. I think it's a really nice, the geometry of that move is beautiful. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But the good thing about this kind of position is that since it's open, the queen can quickly shift to the king side if she needs to defend. So it should be just fine. And he's got a castle soon. Yeah, he does. Especially now that the bishop just aims here. So it looks like this is going to be lost. But again, if black wants to take b2, he's got to trade queens, which is sort of poisonous for him at this point. So instead, he just takes back on f7. Now we got 3 for 5 pawns. This is a really interesting game about material imbalance. So it's like Silman's thicking technique, analyze the imbalances. In this case, we have the imbalance of material, 2 pawns, for some initiative. So that's really all that, well, also open lines, controlling some open lines. So that's really all that black has going for him, is using the pressure of those with his active pieces, open lines, to generate some initiative against white's position. You could see, though, black so far is doing very well at that. He's beginning to maximize every single piece. All 5 of those pieces are really asserting some influence on white's position. And again, like we mentioned, the queen is active, the bishop's active, not much. So, I mean, I would still be concerned if I were white here. I would be very cautious. Try to break free. I might sack a pawn back. I might just give him a pawn back just to alleviate the pressure, maybe trade into an endgame or just get some pieces out. Because, I mean, finally we castled, the rooks are coming. Let's see if we can just stave off some threats. Yeah, he should be fine. So there we go. He just chooses to develop, and he hits that bishop, immediately creating pressure. Hey, who knows? He might sack the exchange for the bishop pair and 2 pawns or something. You never know. There's some rich ideas in this position. And we're just exerting our influence here. If the bishop moves, we can invade later on. So obviously the rook is much better placed here than on f1. And the bishop on e3 is nicely defended by the pawn, and it defends the pawn. So some nice kind of symbiotic relationship there. Everything is working together. We just need this guy out, and then we'll be happy. As long as there's nothing on. I'm a little worried about g2. Maybe he goes bishop f1. But you should be worried about that g2 pawn with that bishop just eyeing g2. Queen anytime can hop in somehow. But you can't really. Yeah, you could go here because the bishop f3, I can imagine a sack of the rook, tear it open. So it's dangerous. Yeah, white needs to be very careful. So bishop retreats though. Maybe he's like, no, you're not going to take my bishop with your rook, or maybe some tactical possibilities. He just says, hey, I'm keeping that bishop on b7. That thing is strong. Eyeing across the board and defending. Interesting, but now we go for the pawn grab as Reshevsky. Reshevsky just takes the pawn on a6. And again, I mentioned, anytime you take one of those pawns, you got to worry about like the rook coming over. Does he do it? No, he just goes, he threatens a mate. But he doesn't do any kind of pin. Why doesn't the pin work here? Let's see. If the rook goes here, are there back rank mate troubles or what? If the rook goes here, what do we have? Well, this rook is still doing a defensive job for the time being. I'm thinking something where you might sack your queen for some pieces. This is a position where maybe I'd pull out Stockfish for a second just to see, just to understand the complications, because it's fascinating. But let's try and find it. Rook a8. What does he have in mind there? He's got to sack something, because there's a pin. There must be some strong pressure that you can generate on the, like with this back rank. This back rank could get real dangerous. Is it somehow doubling up to get down here? But the rook just goes back, like I said. If you sack, what if you sack like this? That's kind of interesting. He takes. We throw in a check. If bishop goes back, we already get the queen back. That looks good. And then you're just going to be up some pawns. No, yeah. Because the rook's hanging and the bishop's hanging. So he has to move his rook away and then you free your bishop. Not even hanging because you're still hitting f8. So yeah, that should be fine. But the question is, what about here? Now it's interesting because, do we still have bishop d4? Does that work? If you take, see the difference, if you take, there's no more bishop d4 because the rook has left the defensive d4. But what if you just, the question is, what if you just play bishop d4 here? This is fascinating because now the queen needs to guard the rook because the bishop's pinned if the queen moves. So for instance, let's say the queen just does something like a random move like here. That's a mate. So, because the bishop's pinned. This gets interesting. But what if the queen takes, and if he tries to win it, we take. Oh, I don't know. That doesn't look too clear. I mean, white's up these pawns, but it's opposite colored bishops. This bishop can control that square to queen. It's a little messy. But what if he doesn't sack his queen anyway? What if he goes? I'm probably on some big sideline here, some random sideline, but bishop d4. So the queen would have to go maybe, let's say, guards the rook. I don't know. May not be enough. I mean, you can get, no, this bishop will be hanging at the end of that line. Yeah, it doesn't, okay, what's going on here then? Let's just, I'll save some time here, let's see. So we looked at it, but if rook a8, what am I missing here? See if you could find it. There's got to be something that he anticipated that white has here after rook a8. Do we have bishop d4 right away? No, I don't think so. Let's pull it up. I'm going to use Stockfish for a second just to see. I'm sure it'll pop up with some answer right away. So white is winning because of, queen b3, of course, because the loose rook on f7. So it's nothing too tricky. I was thinking some back rank, but sometimes it's just a basic move like that, and you hit the rook. So you got off the pin with an attack. So if you take on a6, I take on f7. So the best move. Oh, that's interesting. It gives queen e4, threatening mate. Again, now that bishop f1 idea. So the bishop gets safe that way. Now the rook's hanging and the bishop's safe. Okay, that's pretty clear. And now Stockfish gives plus almost 0.4, plus 4 almost up a rook, basically. Okay. So now we realize why rook a8 didn't work. Pretty simple. So he goes queen e4 first, threatening mate. Bishop takes, yeah, why not? Oh, and that's the thing. So again, it looked like it was like just pawn grabbing for Reshevsky there by taking on a6. But that's really instructive how by making this move on the queen side, it's actually anticipating, obviously, this attack on the king side that he knows Sabo wants. That was smart. So he was very smart of him to play bishop takes a6. So now after queen e4, he just chops off the bishop. And now we're already seeing this dilution of the threats, of the activity in black's position. We're beginning to return. We're returning to some kind of more static position that white wants, because black needs that dynamism. Black needs kinetic energy. He needs the position to explode in order to take advantage of his temporary imbalance, right? Whereas white doesn't want things. He only wants things to explode when it favors him. In this case, he wants to lock things up, or just trade down, keep it calm, and let me win a theoretical endgame. That's an ideal scenario. No risk. You want minimum risk. If you're playing with black here, you're down a couple. Well, now we're down, 3 pawns. So we got 5 pawns per 2. You want maximum risk. You have to risk. But I think we're beginning to see that it's just sort of dying out. Now let's see any commentary I missed. After rook f7 earlier, it said black hurriedly removes the more dangerous pawn. And he mentioned if you took on b2 earlier, trading queens, white would just go rook a d1. Oh, and there was a mate. Okay, that looks interesting. Let's just look at that. So he gave a commentary after rook takes f7. He said, Bronstein, if queen takes b2, and again, I mentioned intuitively you don't really want to make a move like this. So after rook takes f7, instead of rook takes. So if he goes here immediately, then he says, after trade queens, go rook a d1, bishop takes a2 allows them elegant mate. So black is trying to get greedy himself and win pawns. Okay, now we have basically going to be 3 against 3. And black will have, for now, an outside pass pawn until it gets chopped off. But it says it allows an elegant mate. So that is, Oh, rook d2, and now already black has gotten himself into risk, some serious risk tactically by putting his bishops like that. You can see white's bishops are nicely defended. Black's bishops are too loose. Loose pieces fall off. The ingredients, preconditions for some tactics. So as we see, combined with this king on the diagonal, combined with this should help us, right? Controlling f8, a g8. So we have rook defending on b8. Aha, nice. And now if he wants to take back, not only do we win the rook, we get a checkmate. Very nice. So we can see that the elimination of a bishop can just really weaken things. I talked about that, how bishops could be guardians for the king. You could be a guardian for the king all the way back here, but not if you get taken, not if you get sacked by the rook. The rook sacks it, and beautiful mate. Okay, so black will be forced to take the f-pawn off on move 24 when white would remain a healthy pawn up. Yeah, so either way, white is going to have a good endgame there. So rook takes f7, rook f to d1. Oh, and then we got into all this. Yeah, and I think after this, it's just killing the attack, and white should be close to victory here with proper technique. So it says after bishop a6, yeah, he does mention. We tried that. It's good that when you're reading a book, don't just read it all. It's kind of like if you watch a video, for example. So like watching this video. If you're watching this, instead of just watching everything, sometimes you should pause videos and say, hey, rather than just hearing the answer, let me try and guess what it was. So I could have just read the answer and said, after bishop a6, it said a small combination. It says if rook a8, and it explained it all. But we tried to figure it out first. It says if rook a8, queen b3, forking f7 and b7, as we saw. So rook a8. Not bishop, so we can't take on b7. No sacks available. Just bishop b3. Yeah, it's actually a fork, right? Not only are you escaping, but you're hitting b7 as well. You're threatening to win it, and that's where here defending it lets him get out. But yeah, it's like a fork for defense. But then we're up several pawns, and the attack again has pretty much been killed off. Okay, so after queen e4, takes. There we go. I knew that rook had to come out. Now, I guess there wasn't really much else you could do. I hope you don't make a passive move like bishop c1. I mean, you're gonna then black is gonna again be able to claim that he has compensation for those pawns. So you're up 3 pawns, right? 5 for 2. You just gotta give a pawn back. Just get your pieces out. And of course, this is not a fork that can work because the rook is hanging on c8, and there's gonna be some back rank mate threat. So now, actually, positionally, maybe white is even better because you can see white has a nice luft for the king. There's no back rank mate problems. The bishop is securely guarded. The rooks are nicely centralized. The queen is active. Yeah, everything looks fine. And then black has to worry about the back rank mate if the rook leaves. And the bishop has to babysit, essentially, the back rank. Or if you ever get down there, the bishop might have to sacrifice itself to stop the back rank mate. So, I definitely am happy with the position here if I were playing with the white pieces. Rook goes to e8. And he doesn't even provide any more commentary. I don't think we need too much either. Let's see. Securing everything, securing the second rank. So, no, I mean, we do need to look at anything about trying to take b2. But I think it's pretty obvious because after takes, if we take this way, if you try and take this, that can't be healthy. We got this check. And then we have a mate. Yeah. That's a mate. Nice long distance use of those long range pieces. Beautiful example. You can operate from way across the board. Rook takes what else? Bishop takes b2. Any other possibilities? Rook takes again. If rook takes and gets, this is again being greedy without, there's no justification there because we have rook down, check. Oh, actually, it's going to be mate because you don't take with the rook, you take with the queen. Again, long. That queen on a3 comes in handy sometimes. Okay, so rook e8. Now we can guard up. That's why he went rook d2, guarding that. So now we remain 3 pawns up. Winning game. I'm sure if you clicked on Stockfish, it would say like +4, +3. But again, those numbers don't matter too much. We just know that we're winning here. Okay, he takes away the loof, tries to get some kind of. He's got to hope for some kind of desperate counterattack. But as long as white plays solidly, if Reshevsky just holds on, he should be fine. So doubling rooks. Yeah. Just got to take advantage of the 7th and 8th ranks. We could think about where we want to enter. King tries to get away from that corner. It's a little dangerous now with its dark squares and open squares around the king. Ah, interesting. Nice and tight, b3. It comes up a few times, this b3 move. In the Fischer game, I talked about game 6 in Fischer versus Spassky, that critical game 6 where Fischer plays b3, stopping any threats, securing his bishop on c4. It's funny as you see it. Sometimes just move like b3. You see it a lot, securing everything. You'll see grandmasters, a lot of strong endgame players. You'll see them make little moves like that, just secure, just like king g8 too. You'll see them play a move like king g2, or just these like tightening moves, tightening the screws before you go in for the final kill. Because now we can move the queen freely. So bishop c7, and there you go, queen a6. I'm liking that f6 square. Taking a look at that rook on b7, very active. You just look at the scope of your pieces. It's just trying to maximize those pieces, creating maximum pressure on the position. Okay, rook b4. Again, black has to try something. He's got to try and go for the king or something, because it's going to be very hard to hold any kind of pawn with pawns in the endgame. Especially if some pieces get traded off here. But even with the pieces on the board. But before we even try to push these pawns, look, he just secured them. He's going to just activate. Maybe he'll try to win, just go directly for the king, maybe win a piece. Just tie his opponent down, maybe make some trades. And then he can push his pawns when things are ready. No need to rush. So he trades queens. Queen d5, wait, queen e5, and then there you go. Probably they were in time pressure, because I don't think his opponent would willingly want to trade queens there. That's over. Yeah, he just threw in the towel at that point, because after queen takes, rook takes, 3 pawns up, yeah, these 2 connected passed pawns. You can play on if you want for another 20-30 moves until it's decisive. Yeah, but the rooks are just coming in. I think, again, don't push the pawns right away. Just bring the rooks in, try to get the bishop in somehow, create more pressure on the king, because his king is just open. You could double rook somehow on the 7th rank, and probably don't even need those pawns to win on a2 and b3, honestly. But it's just, again, it's endgame insurance. And that in itself is enough to win. But there's so much here just with the actively placed pieces and the open king at this point. Even though it's theoretically entering an endgame now, you can still attack the opponent's king. So let's do a quick review. What happened to that game? It got really interesting in the beginning when things were got pretty dynamic when Sabo sacrificed that pawn and offered 2 pawns. So things got super sharp, and justifiably. Sabo says, hey, you didn't castle. And that's where you get into this provocation. So maybe you can argue Reshevsky wanted that. He wanted that from his opponent. He says, hey, go ahead. So his philosophy was, I'm going to pick off some pawns. You're going to think you're going to get compensation, but I'm going to play really accurately, stop your compensation, and end up winning. Which is precise. So his thesis worked out this game. It doesn't always work. Chess is a struggle. You can't say, I know for sure I'm going to win this based on winning 2 pawns. But he felt that chances favored him in this game. So, and yeah, I like it, especially after those weaknesses on the king side were problematic in terms of counterattacking prospects for white here. Okay, so we already trade off 1 piece. Queen ties us down, and now he does that nice move, bishop c4, and then it says he's losing after bishop d7. h3 was nice. Now again, but no, bishop e2, responding to this knight g4 stuff also, very important. So yeah, if he had gone knight g4, he probably would have just chopped it off and castled, I think. And because that knight is really the strongest attacker against the king. Once you castle, I don't see any prospects for immediate attack by black, and at least you're up 2 pawns for white here. So, or at least 1 pawn after, if he gets this. But maybe he'll get that later on. But I'm more concerned with activating my pieces. And even though black has the bishop pair, white's knight eventually will hop in and get pretty active here in the central squares. So, oh, just in time, run out of power. Okay, b5, that was interesting. It reminds me of the Immortal game by Zurich against Anderson, where Zurich throws b5 at him. It's like his little invention, which didn't quite work out. So maybe he was inspired by Zurich in this game. Goes back. You see a lot of the same ideas popping up again and again. Okay, so of course you can't trade queens in this position. Can't go into the endgame for Sabo. And yeah, he just did a really good job of just kind of warding off the threats and maintaining his pawn advantage, working with the geometry of his pieces. Really nice example of technique. And that bishop a6 move, very nice. Again, it's not a greedy move. It's actually, well, you pick off a pawn. It gave him 2 connected pass pawns. If you can get away with it, sure, I'll take it. I'll take any way you can give me a win. You want to let me win by checkmate, by queen sacrifice? I'll do that. You want to let me win by the most subtle means, by letting me, weakening your a6 square and letting my bishop infiltrate, which gives me control of your c file? Okay, I'll do that too. I don't care what it is. You have to be agnostic in that sense. You can have your preference of opening, or you might be a little more aggressive. You might be on aggression level 10, but if the opportunity presents itself to win by simple means through simple being up 2 pawns, okay, I'll take it. So that was really instructive in terms of how to get a material advantage, ward off the opponent's threats, trade down, and he resigns. Cool. Well, hopefully that went well for the first streaming session, and hopefully it worked. So I'll see. Let's go on the streaming page. I don't think anyone watched it, but I guess it'll be recorded. Oh, I got a like. Okay, cool. Let's see. Yeah, no one said anything. Maybe if I keep it up for a few months, I'll get a comment or something. But anyway, I just want to get it out there. Contribute to chessdom, I guess I'd say. Let's see, 46 minutes. All right, looks like we're done. We went in depth with the analysis. And if I have time, because I didn't end up having a lesson right now, so I had the chance. But if I have time, then I'll definitely go ahead and do another one, because I want to keep training. Once I start, I can't stop. I'm ready for this Philadelphia International. Okay, how do I stop? That's the question. I mean, I got to stop for now, right? I got to stop temporarily and just lock this thing in. What do I do? I'm a total noob at this. I don't use the apps though. See, I'm using streaming, but I don't mess with the app. Even before the whole Facebook crisis, I'm not messing with these apps. Gonna give all your information to these corporations? No thanks. Got to protect your privacy a little bit. But hey, I mean, I've given in. I've given in to some extent. Got to have fun with it. But you got to protect your digital privacy if you can, to some extent. All right, how do we end this thing? I guess I'm going to go to OBS. Again, I like this open source stuff. It's all about the open source software. And stop streaming. All right, well, thanks for watching, and I'll get some more stuff up there soon. And why don't you, if you can, try to get this book. This is awesome. Bronstein's Zurich International Chess Tournament in 1953. Got to study those classics. There's so much gems, Well, actually, I have them sitting around here too. Bobby Fischer's My 60 Memorable Games. I'll probably look at some Fischer games. Can't go wrong with that. I always like to study Capablanca too. I'll probably study some Rubinstein endgames, the Rook endgames, Rubinstein. I mean, just look at them, do some analysis. What else? I'm just going to work through some Grandmaster games, just get a feel for it. Sometimes before tournaments too, even before a Blitz tournament, I'll be like, let me just look through some Fischer games or something. Let me look through some tall games, get an attacking, or Reshevsky games, get in a positional mindset. Whatever kind of mindset you want to get in, kind of look at a player that you like. I can never go wrong with Capablanca though. He's just very instructive, clear player. So study those Grandmaster games, and hopefully you get a lot out of them. And in this case, streaming. So let me know what you think, and if you have any requests for any particular Grandmaster games that I can analyze. All right, thanks, and good luck with your chess training.